to an Amazon for local brands and local designers here in the country. And I've realized a couple of things over the past 3-4 years that we've been doing this. And number one is my favorite definition of entrepreneurship, which is, and there's so many different definitions, but one that really struck me is entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity regardless of resources currently controlled. And that struck me because of the second part of it, regardless of resources currently controlled. And that struck me because here in the Philippines, the mentality is, and the culture is, let's get a job, let's have some savings, let's get some capital on our own before we start a business. And that definition was really mind-changing for me because that gave me the confidence to see that, this is a dream that I can personally pursue, even if I didn't have the resources or the expertise to be doing it. I run an e-commerce platform, but I don't know how to code a single line of software. And those two parts of the definition, the other part being the pursuit of opportunity, is I think, super crucial as well, especially to today with technology breaking down so many barriers. Right now, technology like e-commerce, social media, the internet, it's allowing us to access bigger markets. It's allowing us to access those markets very, very cheaply. And it's allowing us to quickly iterate and launch different projects. Having said that, there are three big ideas and observations that I've seen which, in a way, also worry and concern me. And I think it's worth bringing these three things up because I don't think we know or talk about them too often. The first one is this whole idea of cumulative advantage. And what that basically means is that in technology, you'll notice that there's this phenomena of great entrepreneurs having had a great nurturing environment. And I'll give you a few examples of that. Here, our traditional mindset is most of our entrepreneurs are rags to riches stories. They started out poor and they hustle and they grow their businesses over decades. But if you look at the technology industry, that's not necessarily the case. What not a lot of people know, for instance, was that Bill Gates studied in a middle school that was one of the few schools in his state that had access to a mainframe computer. Mark Zuckerberg, what not a lot of people also know, had a private tutor going to his home that his parents paid for 7 years, teaching him how to write code. So by the time he hit Harvard, he actually already had 7+ years experience of developing software. He was already an expert, and that's why he dropped out. And so this whole idea that somebody can start from scratch with technology isn't necessarily true. There's a lot of built-in advantages, and that's why we're seeing America really, despite decades of talk of the rise of Japan, the rise of China, is still the predominant leader in technology because they've got that built-in cumulative advantage already that students go through. The second observation I've seen is what the industry calls the power law. And what this basically means is that although it's very easy to start a business in technology, it's very easy to become an entrepreneur these days, it's much, much harder to scale that company. And if you look at each major tech industry, you'll notice that there's only one or two big players. Unlike here in the Philippines, if you look at banking, if you look at real estate, there's multiple players. How many search engines are there? There's just Google. Is there a number 2 social network after Facebook? It's just Facebook. In B2C e-commerce, it's just Amazon. In C2C commerce, it's just eBay, or here in the Philippines, it's Sulit, or OLX. And that has big implications for us, not just as entrepreneurs, but as a country as well. Because all of us here, eventually, I would argue even today, won't just be competing within the country, but will be competing against the Alibabas and the Amazons of the world as well. And that has a lot of implications to things like policy, enabling infrastructure, education for the youth. The third thing that I observed is what people call the exponential function and exponential growth. If you look at previous generations of technology, if you look at TV, for instance, it took TV 60 to 70 years to penetrate 90% of the population. It took the internet less than 15 years to do that. It took less than 10 years for mobile phones to penetrate 90% of the population. If you look at the computing power of all the iPhone 6s that were sold on its opening weekend last year, imagine that. Imagine all of those iPhones just on that Saturday and Sunday that Apple sold it. The computing power in those iPhones alone exceeded the computing power of all personal computers in the world back in 1995. And it's hard to imagine that because all of this are happening in a very invisible way, right? It's bits and bytes, it's data. But it's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, and we're gonna see so many layers of exponential growth from social media to commerce to the amount of data that we're generating. So if you combine all those three forces together, cumulative advantage, the power law, and exponential growth, I am frankly worried because with every available metric out there, and I'm sure Dr. Habito will be able to see consistency in this, is that as a country, I think we are in very big danger of falling behind. And not because we're not improving, yes we are, but all of our neighbors from the US to Japan to even Singapore, who has a prime minister that knows how to code, by the way, have just been pulling beyond the pack. Singapore now launched a smart cities program that seeks to wire the whole island with 200 Mbps internet in 3 years' time, I think, was the timeline. And they're planning their infrastructure not for the next 5 years, but for 2030 in mind. And I think if we all learn to realize how big and how fast those changes are happening, I think you'll be scared. You'll be as scared as me as well. But regardless of that, I see a lot of hope. And that's mostly because of the people in this room. Because if each one of us here, as you adopt technology in your businesses, or you use technology to launch your own businesses, the more voices we have, the more educated and the more skills we grow as a community ourselves, I think we're going to reach the point where our political leaders will really have to start paying attention and start listening. For the first time this year, I think in 2016, for next year's elections, the number of Facebook users from the Philippines, I think will begin to equal or exceed the number of voters in the Philippines. And I think that's going to bring about major change. And I think that change is going to start with us here, the people from the Sinag program who are all seeing this and living this technology changes every day. And we'll be happy to chat more during the panel and afterwards. I hope I didn't sound like a very pessimistic person up here, but there's a lot of hope and optimism. Thank you so much.